In the season finale, the event on Capitol Hill has left the nation pretty frightened. And because of it, the president is about to announce that he's going to release Compound V to the public, with military members and first responders getting it. So Mallory, along with Congresswoman Newman, go to the Secretary of Defense and try to plead with him that they shouldn't be doing this. And Newman makes the point that this has to be vought. It has to be a coup. Even though they killed their own people, they're doing this because it ups their stock price. I mean, the U.S. government has ordered tons of Compound V because of this initiative. And while the Secretary of Defense believes her and agrees with both of them, the problem is neither of them have proof. And without concrete proof, and I'm talking concrete proof, there's nothing he can do. He has to go along with the president's order. Now, I mentioned how everybody was scared, and that doesn't exclude Billy and his group. Starlight sends her mother away from the Cash for Gold basement and then heads down to find Huey, who is trying to plead with the group not to just go after the Supes and kill all of them, to actually do this the right way. But they've tried that, and they're sick of that approach. So they're loading up to kill Stormfront, Homelander, the whole gang. And Starlight says, well, what if I testify? The issue with that is she's still a wanted fugitive, but she thinks she knows somebody who would be willing to testify. So she tells them, give us the day, grabs Huey, and heads off with him. And as they're driving to this place, she finally confronts Huey about the fact that he's not a 52-year-old man, but he listens to a ton of Billy Joel. Why is that? And it takes some coercing, but he reveals that his mother used to listen to Billy Joel with him all the time. And his mother left him when he was 6 years old. Just got up and decided, you know what? I'm done with these people. So by listening to Billy Joel, it's kind of the one connection that he still has with his mother. They finally arrive at the person's place that Starlight thinks will testify, and that person is Queen Maeve. And Queen Maeve has continued to go on her bender after Elena has left her, and she's not in a great mood to talk. She immediately starts kind of insulting Huey out of the blue, but Starlight lets it go, saying, we need you to testify on the record against Vought, Homelander, everything. And unfortunately, she's their last chance, but she says no. And it's not because it's a suicide mission, it's because she's tired. She's tired of trying because it's not going to matter in the end. And Starlight continues to try to get her to go along with this mission, but she curses them out and forces them to leave. So that didn't work. And as Billy and his team just sat in the Cash for Gold basement waiting for word from Huey and Starlight, they get an unexpected visitor in Becca Butcher. Becca escaped the Vought compound, and she remembers Billy saying that he lived in a Cash for Gold basement, and she was able to locate it. And she's kind of come hat in hand, praying that Billy would be willing to help her get Ryan back. So they escort her down to the basement where Mother's Milk and Frenchie are treating her like gold because they've heard so many stories about her, but they've never met her. But Billy kind of shoos them away and reassures her that he will find Ryan and he's going to make some calls. And the call he makes is to Stan Edgar, who just got out of a lunch with Alistair Adana, and they were talking about the Seven. And Alistair brings up letting the Deep back into the Seven, telling Stan Edgar about all the great work they've done and how his Q rating is through the roof. And Stan actually seems open to that. But then Alistair brings up the A-Train, and Stan says, no, letting back one guy, that's one thing. Letting back two, it seems desperate. And also, there's the Stormfront situation, because she doesn't like A-Train. And Alistair asks why she doesn't like A-Train, but Stan kind of chuckles to himself, saying, you know why. She was one of your grandfather's first followers in this church, which means you have a file on her, which means that you know why she has a problem with A-Train. I shouldn't have to tell you. But instead of acknowledging that comment, Alistair just says, all right, well, the Deep is still a win. And they get up, shake hands, and agree that Alistair's office will contact Edgar's office, and they go their separate ways. But unbeknownst to the both of them, A-Train was in the closet listening to this the whole time, and he is pissed off. But as Stan Edgar is leaving that lunch, he gets a call from his secretary telling him that Billy Butcher is on the phone, and it's a life or death matter. And it all has to do with Ryan, who is in Vought Tower, and he spent the entire day with Ashley, kind of bored out of his mind a little bit. Ashley had to babysit him because Homelander was still trying to figure out this whole terrorist situation that has people's heads popping off. And the issue that he's trying to wrap his brain around is the fact that it wasn't him, and he knows it wasn't Stormfront. So who is it? And the name he's come up with is, it has to be Stan Edgar. And Stormfront makes a racial comment saying, well, maybe. I mean, he is pretty smart, even for his kind. But Stormfront doesn't really care about this, saying to Homelander that this situation is a win. They're going to release Compound V to the public, and they're going to get what they want, an army of Supes. And they're going to make sure that the good people get Compound V. But Homelander says, what, you just think a billion people are going to stand by and let that happen? But she reassures him, don't worry, Frederick had an answer for everything. They also get some unfortunate news on Black Noir that he's basically brain dead after his little allergic reaction. So that's why Homelander couldn't really spend a lot of quality time with Ryan. And when they find him, Ryan's kind of sad and asks if he can call his mom. And Stormfront sits down next to him and says, you know, I think it's time for a field trip. And both Stormfront and Homelander take him to this cheesy restaurant called Planet Vought. And when they walk through the door, they're immediately besieged upon people wanting autographs and selfies. And since they're in the public, they're more than happy to take them. The issue is Ryan is a little overwhelmed by this and is feeling very claustrophobic. And when Homelander notices that, he picks up Ryan, takes him out, and flies off. Homelander takes him to that cabin where he used to hang out with Doppelganger at and lets him cool off for a bit. But when Stormfront shows up, the two head in there and talk to Ryan, and he apologizes for how he acted at the restaurant, but just says it was a lot for him. And Homelander sits down next to him and tells him that, yeah, when he was a kid and he got brought out in the public, he was terrified. But maybe one day they can fly off together. And Ryan looks at him and says, I know you want me to be like you, but I'm not. And Homelander tells Ryan, I didn't just come out and start flying one day. I had to teach myself how to do it. But luckily for you, you have me who can help teach you. So they start trying to work on his powers. And while Ryan is training, Huey and Starlight are planning on their next move, when all of a sudden the A-Train popped into their car. And they're a little freaked out, immediately pull over and ask how the hell he found them, but he reminds them he's the fastest guy in the world. It took him about 20 minutes. He just ran around the city. And the reason he showed up is because he gives them a file. The same file that Stan Edgar was talking about to Alistair Adana that was in the Church of the Collective's archives on Stormfront. And it reveals everything that we already know about her, about the fact that she's a Nazi. And Huey asks, why did you do this? And he did it for one simple reason, to get back in the Seven. If she's out, he feels like it's his opportunity to get back in. But he tells them, I didn't give this to you. You found this on your own. And then he runs off. So while they've been just handed this bombshell information, they head back to the Cash for Gold place to show it to Billy. But Billy is meeting with Stan Edgar. And it all has to do with where Ryan is. Vaught's very interested in Ryan because he's their safety net for Homelander. And both Billy and Stan Edgar strike a deal that Billy will get Ryan back. And when he does that, he's going to call Vought and they're going to send soldiers pinging his location on his cell phone. They're then going to pick up Ryan and take him away. And Billy's going to get his wife back. But Edgar says, wait, hold a second. The whole point of this was so he's raised by his mother. I mean, what are you going to do when she's banging on my door wanting to be reunited with her son? And Billy tells him, well, in that case, you'll tell her that it's the only way to keep him safe from Homelander. And then they shake on it. Billy heads back to the Cash for Gold place where Huey and Starlight show him the file on Stormfront, and it's huge. And they then prepare to send it off to the media. But with Stan Edgar's help, they've got the location of where Ryan is. And Billy tells the group, look, this is my thing. You don't have to come if you don't want to. But they all agree they're going to go and help. And that includes Becca Butcher, who used to be in the army and is a pretty good shot. But Billy doesn't want her to go, but it's her kid. She's going to go. And she makes Billy swear on his dead brother that Billy will get Ryan back to her no matter what. Because Ryan cannot grow up like Homelander did. He's a good kid. He deserves better. And Billy swears. So the group goes off to the cabin and starts going through the steps of their plan to get Ryan back. And Ryan is busy with both Homelander and Stormfront trying to use his powers unsuccessfully. And Stormfront tells him that they're going to need him because they're at war. There are people that hate them just because of the color of their skin, and it's a white genocide. And that comment kind of raises Homelander's eyebrows a bit, but then all of a sudden Stormfront's phone starts going berserk, and that's because news has gotten out that she is a Nazi. And not just that she's a Nazi, but that she was Frederick Vaught's wife, and she's like 100 years old. So she races back to Vought Tower, and that was step one, getting Stormfront away from Ryan. Step two is getting Homelander away from Ryan, and they do that by luring him out when they set off this terrible frequency with a bunch of speakers that hurt Homelander's ears, hurt Ryan's ears, and Homelander takes off to investigate where this sound is coming from and to stop it. And when he does that, the group jumps into action. Billy and Becca run into the cabin, and Becca grabs Ryan. And Ryan is thrilled to see Becca. But then he notices Billy and says, whoa, who's that guy? And Becca lets him know that's my husband. They then get in the car and head off, but they stop, and Billy tells Mother's Milk to take Becca and Ryan and go. But that wasn't part of the plan. And Becca certainly doesn't want to leave without Billy, but Billy lets her know that he had made a deal with Stan Edgar to just leave Ryan there. But when it came time to actually go through with it, he couldn't do it. And there's a bunch of Vought soldiers heading their way. So because of that, they're running out of time, and she doesn't have a choice. He instructs Mother's Milk to take her and Ryan, meet up with Mallory, and get them both to safety. He then instructs Becca to just raise him right. And as Mother's Milk is driving both Ryan and Becca to safety, Stormfront reappears, throwing their car off the road. And when that happens, Billy races over to the car to make sure everybody's okay. And luckily for Billy, he's not even on Stormfront's radar because she's noticed that Starlight is with them and says, I'm assuming it was you who sent all those lies to the media. But Starlight reminds her they're not lies. And Stormfront Stormfront says, well, people love what I have to say. They believe in it. They just don't like the word Nazi, which literally just proved that the pictures were in fact real. I don't know why she bothered lying about it. Now, this conversation is distracting Stormfront from the car, and Billy has gotten Mother's Milk, Becca, and Ryan out, and Mother's Milk tells Billy, go, get out of here. We'll take care of Stormfront. And Billy, Becca, and Ryan head off into the woods. So Mother's Milk heads back and joins the group who is arguing with Stormfront, where during the conversation, Kimiko just starts laughing. And Stormfront says, what are you laughing about? And Kimiko signs to Frenchie that she's going to kick her ass. And both Stormfront and Kimiko go and attack Stormfront. And at first, they're doing a pretty good job, but eventually Stormfront is just too powerful for them both. She snaps Kimiko's neck, throws Starlight back, and is about to kill just about everybody when Queen Maeve shows up and punches her in the face. Starlight then goes to join the front, and Kimiko has unsnapped her neck, and the three women start beating the shit out of Stormfront. Because in the end, girls do it better. And Stormfront's getting her ass kicked so badly that she actually flees off into the sky. But she doesn't fly to Vought Tower. She flies and cuts off Billy, Ryan, and Becca. And she immediately throws Billy to the side and tells Ryan to come with her. But as she inches closer and closer to Ryan and Becca, Becca pulls out a knife and stabs her in the eye. And when that happens, she rips the knife out of her eye and then starts choking Becca to death, telling her something that we heard before: I like to see the lights go out. Ryan is begging her to stop, and Billy tries to attack her, but to no avail. And this is when we see Ryan finally use his powers. He's not just able to take Stormfront out, he's able to obliterate her. She's got no arms, no legs, she's fried, and she's just mumbling German to herself. The issue is he doesn't know how to harness his powers, and when he took Stormfront out, he also blew a hole in his mom's artery in her neck. And Billy sees Becca bleeding profusely and goes to be with her, telling her to hold on, it'll be alright. But with her last dying words, she tells Billy, remind Ryan that this is not his fault. Keep him safe. Promise me that. But then Becca ends up passing away. And Billy looks over at Ryan and he's apologizing profusely, and Billy gets really, really pissed off. But then they both are joined by Homelander, who slaughtered all of those soldiers that Vought were sent to pick up Ryan to find the location of his son. And he asks Ryan if he's the one who killed Stormfront, and Ryan says, I didn't mean to. He then gestures to Ryan for him to come with him, but Ryan surprisingly doesn't go with Homelander, instead choosing Billy. And right before Homelander is about to kill Billy, Queen Maeve shows up right behind him, saying that you're going to let him go. You're going to leave me alone. You're going to leave everybody alone. And then shows him the reason why he's going to do all this, showing him the videotape of Homelander leaving all of those people to die on the plane. Homelander tells her, I'm just going to attack you and everybody you love. And she says, you know what, that's fine. Because when this video gets out, nobody will ever love you ever again, and everybody will know what a monster you really are. And since Homelander's public perception means the world to him, he reluctantly lets Billy and Ryan walk away. Now, Queen Maeve, Homelander, and Stormfront head back to Vought Tower, where Stan Edgar is holding a press conference. And much like earlier, when he pinned all of the blame on Madeline Stillwell, he's doing that once again, putting all of the blame on the heads popping off on Capitol Hill to Stormfront, saying she was rogue. He also mentions that they will not be releasing Compound V to the public. And then he moves aside and gives the podium to Homelander, who mentions how Stormfront has been neutralized and taken to a secure location. He then publicly apologizes to Starlight and welcomes her back into the Seven, and then he just goes through the motions of a speech. After this press conference, Starlight goes and meets Huey in a park. And Huey asks her, do you even feel safe going back into Vought Tower? And she goes, not really. But if you jump ship and you let the asshole steer, then you're part of the problem. So she's going to hang in there, just like Huey taught her. She then kisses him, and Huey finds this to be a really weird time to tell her that he's not going to be as clingy anymore to people, trying to hold on to a relationship only because he's scared that they're going to leave. And she takes this as, oh, okay, he wants to be just friends. But he says, no. I'm still going to cling to you. I'm not going to be an idiot. It's just other people I'm not going to cling to. And she asks him, well, who are you talking about? And while we don't get an answer, we're going to assume it's Billy Butcher, who is also in a park with Ryan. And Ryan is just feeling down and depressed because his mom just died. And Billy takes off a necklace and gives it to him, telling Ryan that Becca gave it to Billy. And the necklace is of St. Christopher. And St. Christopher was always supposed to keep Billy safe. And he did a pretty good job of it. And Billy then puts the necklace around Ryan's neck. But Ryan's ride just arrived, as Mallory gets out with a few other CIA agents, and both Billy and Ryan head to the SUVs. Right before Billy puts Ryan in the SUV, he says, don't forget what I told you. And Ryan said, don't be a cunt. Never change, Billy Butcher. Ryan then gets in the car and they close the door, and Billy tells Mallory, Vaught's just not going to let him go. But Mallory says, don't worry about Vought, I'll take care of them. Mallory then tells him that all the charges for him and his team have been dropped, even for the crimes they actually did commit. She also tells him that the White House is opening an office for Soup Affairs, and Congresswoman Newman is going to be in charge of it. And Newman has put some money off the books for Mallory to set up a task force to kind of keep the soups in check. And she asked Billy if he'd be interested in it. But the only thing Billy heard was, the charges are dropped and you're free to go. And Billy just walks off and lets his team know. And this allows Mother's Milk to finally get back to his family, and Kimiko and Frenchie to finally get out of the Cash for Gold basement. Now, back with the Church of the Collective, Alistair Adana calls a meeting with both A-Train and the Deep, and he tells both of them that the news about Stormfront came from their archives because somebody stole the file. And the weird thing is, the security camera footage didn't see anybody, and everybody in the room knows that it's the A-Train. And the A-Train says, "Whoa, let me explain." But to his surprise, he doesn't have to explain because Alistair Adana is thrilled about this. Stormfront had been very critical of the church for years, and it's always good to take down a Nazi. And because of that, A-Train is back in the 7. And A-Train is pumped, and the Deep is pumped for him. But when the Deep asks, "Well, I'm in too, right?" Alistair says, "No, unfortunately not." You see, letting back one reclamation project, that's good. Letting back 2, that's desperate. But we'll continue to work with you, and you can continue to take some classes. But the Deep is sick of taking classes, sick of wasting money, curses out Alistair Adana, and tells him that Fresca sucks, which really hits home. And after the Deep storms out, Alistair calls up Congresswoman Newman, congratulating her and saying it's about time the U.S. government set up something to keep these soups in check. Congresswoman Newman ends up thanking him, saying, "I know that the information on Stormfront came from your group, so thanks for that." And he says, "Don't worry about it. We have tons of dirt on a lot of soups." And it really could be a death blow to Stan Edgar. But that is, of course, if you're into expediting the church's tax exempt. And she says, "Yeah, that's a small price to pay. Call my office. We'll set it up." And Alistair's feeling pretty good about himself and cracks open a Fresca, but when he does that, his head explodes. And that's because Victoria Newman was standing outside of the Church of the Collective, and she was the one who was exploding heads, because she is, in fact, a soup. She then heads off to her office where, to her surprise, Huey is sitting there waiting for her. And she thanks Huey for all he did, saying, "How can I help?" And Huey says, "Well, you can help by getting me a job. I just never felt like I fit in with that group, and I feel like it's time for me to start my own path." And Victoria Newman says, "All right, sounds good. When can you start?" And that is the end of Season 2 of The Boys. Thank you so much for getting to this point of the recap. I truly appreciate it. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Like this video if you liked it. If you thought this recap absolutely sucked, hit the thumbs down button. If you want my views on things, check out my podcast, Scene Invaders. And if you know somebody that needs a recap, please, sharing is caring. Send them my way.